Hello and welcome. This is the Bits vs. Bytes podcast. I'm your host, Arma Grigic, and today with me is Marcel Molenaar. He is the country manager Benelux for LinkedIn. Welcome, Marcel.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
No problem at all. Could you tell me a little bit about your background and also how you got to start at LinkedIn?
Yeah, so of course, my full background is on LinkedIn, so I would encourage people to visit my profile. After university in Nijmegen, I actually started my career at IBM
cool.
In Amsterdam, and I was working there for 4 years. And the whole, movement around e-business was just about to take off. So I worked on a couple of programs there from a marketing function. But then all of my friends actually started working for internet companies. So it was the new thing, work for an internet company.
Yeah.
And so actually I also joined an internet company, which was called Lycos.
Ah, okay.
So for people that go way back.
I know that one.
Yeah. So it was actually powered by a search engine, Hotbot, which is part of Carnegie Mellon University. With a scientific background, and actually we were doing quite okay back in the day. It was before Google, and believe it or not, we actually managed to sell keywords on CPM basis, so not on a cost per click. And actually, this is what launched my career into the online world. And so after that, I worked for several companies in the online space. Which eventually landed me this spot here at LinkedIn.
Oh, very cool. So, I can remember Lycos. That's It's vaguely in my memory because I was pretty young back then. But it was a big thing. Yeah. Didn't they have like the websites and stuff like that? Where you could host your own website.
Exactly.
Like
So they had Tripod.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, the Tripod thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was looking in hindsight, there was all these fun parts of the ecosystem we see currently.
Yeah.
All built together in a portal.
Yeah.
And so it actually was a great playing ground for me to get a lot of experience on different fields of online marketing and online sales. Yeah. So it's pretty fun actually. That's what started me.
Yeah, so LinkedIn now. What spoke to you about LinkedIn? Because I mean, it's a pretty big platform, of course. But what spoke to you about it? Yeah, so there's a couple of things that really caught me at LinkedIn. So first of all, I was a member quite early days member. So I was part of the first 1 million members. So what immediately caught me was that that it focused on being a professional network, connecting professionals. So I like the way how LinkedIn chose that space, particularly. Back in the day of, you had MySpace and you had all of these personal networks, and it was actually before Facebook. Yeah. So that spoke to me. And then secondly, when I started, researching into becoming the head of marketing solutions, started researching the company, actually I found that also, the whole idea of purpose, so beyond profit, is, to connect people to make them more productive and successful. Yeah. And also the vision of economic opportunity. So the culture and the values also played a big part and still do today. So that's actually what attracted me most. Yeah, it's interesting that you say connecting, because we connected through LinkedIn as well to get to this podcast. Of course, as well. Yeah. And I have to say that I think that maybe 90% of the guests that I get on the show are through LinkedIn.
Of course, where I can understand.
Yeah, where I just find someone on LinkedIn and I'm like, okay, just send a connection request with a note. That's very important.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
But that's something that I think that a lot of people do wrong, is that they just send the connection request and no note at all. Yeah. I'm like, who are you, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, I think so. It has to do. I think, with the fact that sometimes forget that providing a little bit of... we're in a fast-paced world. You meet a lot of people on a daily basis. You speak to a lot of people. Yeah. And it's always good to jog the memory of people a little bit with some context around, here's where we met. The other day we were at this reception. It's great talking to you, etc. Yeah. That usually helps a great deal. And I would also encourage people that even much as yourself, if you're looking for a potential guest, you may think, well, let's just ask for the connection and then explain myself. Yeah. But I would highly encourage people just to do that in the message. So come to the point and just say, so the reason I want to connect is, I have this podcast. I'm looking for interesting guests. And I would like to talk to you about the opportunity of joining or something like that. Like very short. Yeah. And usually 9 out of 10 times, if you provide some relevant context, people will accept.
Yeah, that's what I do exactly like that. Because I was like, okay, if I'm going to connect to these people, I rather... Well, I know it from my own experience, right? When people add me and I'm just like, okay, there's no note, no whatever. I'm like, I'm not good. I even have it in my bio now, where I'm like, okay, if you send me a connection request without anything, then I'm not going to do it. Unless I've just met you at a conference or something like that, right?
So Reid Hoffman, our founder, actually made an interesting comment a little bit back when he was asked that same question about how about accepting connection left and right, and how do you judge them, and especially if they have no context. And he said an interesting thing. He actually said, if you build your network and let's say you accept a connection from someone, but a few months, maybe a year down the line, someone approaches you and asks you, can you introduce me to that person, because obviously I see this person is in your network. They're out of my network. Can you introduce me because I think I have an interesting opportunity. So how comfortable would you feel? Let's say connecting. So would you know enough about that person to connect?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's actually an interesting thing. In fact, to solve a little bit of this, and this is also already a few years down the line, we've introduced also the concept of followers. So a lot of people still may not know this, but if you go into your settings, you can make the prominent button on your profile, you can switch connect to follow. And if you do that, so the first button people will see on your profile, instead of connect, they will see follow.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And so in fact, I have more followers than connections, because usually, you may want to follow people for various reasons, such as yourself, because there's a new podcast or there's some interesting news from your company. But not necessarily connect, because you haven't really met. And so I would also encourage people to look at that option if they feel they get too much connection request and they just want to build followers, much like on many other social platforms.
Sure, I didn't even know that. It's a good one. I think I will definitely put that on.
I recommend it.
Yeah, because you can still make the connection request, but you need to. You have the sub menu, right, where you can then.
Well, in every profile, if you look at the 3 dots on a profile, you can still connect, ask for connection. But it's just, again, we're in a fast-paced world. People, have met each other on a conference or whatever, or just heard about you and saw something in the feed that they liked, and they go like, that's interesting, let's follow, right? And so, again, I have much more followers than connection these days.
And that's an interesting point about that following as well, is that when you do follow someone, it's better to kind of engage with their content as well. I think that's one of the key points that a lot of people forget, is like they're just like, oh yeah, I need this from you, or I want to sell you this product, and I'm just gonna send you the message and not engage with your content at all, right?
Well, that's actually that's actually on another concept, which is I strongly feel that let's say the value, in order for you to extract value from the network, you also have to provide value. So it's not a one-way street. And so, in the short term, I guess, yes, it would work if people just go into the network because, to optimize for what their needs are. But eventually it's gonna be against you. And so I think as a professional, the more value you put into the network, with your knowledge, with connecting people together, with sharing in the feed and all of I mean, the more value you're able to extract out of the network. So it's a two-way street.
You need to post and you need to engage and stuff like that, because the thing is, a lot of people are like, okay, they're like kind of silent followers in a sense where they just follow and they don't do anything on the platform. They just look at the feed and maybe give a like somewhere.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is I always have this example where we know this from, let's say, more personal types of social media where, you may have a lot of people that follow all of your content and they never react. They just, but when you meet them, they are fully up to date.
Yeah, they know everything.
You, right? But they actually don't feel the need to ask for help or to share anything until, for instance, their house is for sale. And then all of a sudden, they go like, they want to use the network to say like, hey, I'm selling my house. Can anyone help me sell my house? And, it's a funny thing. A lot of people think that, well, actually, you never engaged. You've never engaged. You've never offered any help on any other, until it's about you. And so it's a little bit like that, right? You just need a little bit reassurance that the people that are in your network are actually also there to reach out and to help when it's not about themselves.
Yeah, that's for sure. I like a lot of content, even though people will say, oh, maybe it's a little bit too much. Well, I don't feel like that, right? If that will help someone down the line, regardless.
Exactly.
Right? That's the thing.
Exactly.
What I was wondering about is of course, LinkedIn is used to connect people. But what are some of the kind of creative ways you've seen people use LinkedIn in these past few years?
Yeah, so actually it's so you would have to go back to let's say either looking from a member's perspective or from a B2B, from a company perspective.
Yeah, let's do both.
Yeah. So first of all, if you look at it from a company perspective, so actually what people may or may not know is that LinkedIn is comprised of 4 lines of business. So we have talent solutions business, where we help companies to, with the tooling we have to let's say, find the right talent. So build their employer brand, find the right talent, keep that talent engaged, and also, help them actually to build a talent brand through that talent. Secondly, we have marketing solutions, which is basically what you may refer to as the advertising proposition. Then we have sales solutions, which a lot of people know from, let's say, premium accounts. So in particular, this is an enterprise solution called Sales Navigator. And then thirdly, we have learning solutions. Okay, so these are the 4 lines of business that make up the business part of LinkedIn. So from a talent perspective, if you let's say the creative ways I've seen there is particularly, for instance, on engagement, on talent engagement. So I've seen, for instance, that a company posted in the feed, let's say, a very fun way how they start, once a month, how they start their Monday mornings for their employees. And what they did, for instance, and they shot a video of this. So they put a DJ on the doorstep of their headquarters
on a
Monday morning, right? Because people come from the weekend, Monday is usually not the best way. And they said, let's kick it off with a little bit of fun. And they had this DJ set, and there's people, it totally, flipped on the morale and everything. And they posted this and they got a lot of traction. So they said, this is actually part of our company culture, right? To have a little bit of fun and to show, how we engage our employees. So this is an example. I've seen examples in the marketing solutions department where everyone knows now we've got a quite active feed, where a lot of content is shared organically, but also promoted. And I've seen, let's say, very creative ways of how, let's say, this, let's say, how you get thumb-stopping content in the feed. For instance, where there's this one gentleman, I can share later share some links, where your feed overflows with water, or where a dinosaur explodes from your feed, like very creative, impactful. So
you have to watch it,
you have to see it. But it's pretty spectacular. I've seen a lot of examples of that. In sales solutions, through our Sales Navigator product, I've seen very creative way of reaching out. So instead of just going straight for the sale, just creating engaging events and then invite people for that. Or all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
And learning is also a lot about gamification.
Yeah.
So Learning Solutions is a platform basically where we have thousands of courses. And what people have done, what I've seen companies do there, is to create a curriculum of a learning path, which basically leads to, let's say, at the end of the road, they've got a if you will, kind of loot boxes where cool. You can open up boxes because you have a certain amount of points and et cetera, et cetera. So that's all on the business, on the B2B part.
Yeah.
On the member side, I've seen them particularly on the talent side, where I've seen, for instance, people have created a Spotify list, which basically, if you read the titles of the songs, is basically, let's say, an open letter to companies. Let's say, if you read if you read the title list, it's basically a sort of like a letter, and it scrolls through your feed.
Oh my!
So it's a little movie. So very creative, right?
Yeah.
But also, let's say, a day in the life of. So people have been, let's say, a reporter for their company, and they've created these very fun videos, engaging videos about how it is to work at that company. And so, actually, I've started a little bit of a collection on these. So there's many examples, which maybe we can share somewhere later to have a look at how people use the feed.
We could put that in the show notes, no problem at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was wondering about, because you touched on HR a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you? Well, of course, LinkedIn is being used by a lot of HR professionals to find new people that they want to have in their company or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel LinkedIn is kind of impacting that whole market? Yeah. So I think, let's say, in the earlier days, I think the most impactful movement was actually that we gave recruiters and HR professionals direct access to talent at scale. So formerly, some listeners may remember this, I mean, let's go back to just the classifieds, right? You just had classifieds, you had job openings, you posted a job, you had to go through a publisher, cost you, in general, quite expensive. Yeah. And then hope, that you would get enough applicants and then, go through manual CVs and et cetera, et cetera. Sure.
So with the introduction of online and internet, first came the job boards, which is a step in between.
Yeah.
But actually, let's say what's much more powerful, of course, is just that you give recruiters access to a whole, let's say, database of professional talent. Generally 75% of the labor market is what I would say passive search talent, which basically means they're in a role. They're not actively looking for a next opportunity, but they're there. And so this is a massive opportunity for companies actually to dip into that and to look for their new talent.
Yeah.
So this and still today, I mean, this is a big part of what is most impactful for companies. But there's something added to that now, because currently, having more than 660 million members around the globe. With the billions of signals that go through our network, based on their professional profile, the companies they work, the skill set, the education, all of the collective sharing that is done, we've actually built now, let's say, a real-time talent insight platform.
Yeah.
And so what is now very impactful is that, in general, the LinkedIn platform actually is a great source for real-time data on, let's say, the talent at large, so worldwide, but actually also the talent in your company. And so now we have a dashboard, a platform, Talent Insights, where actually you can ask questions to the LinkedIn platform and say, so I give you an example. It says, for instance, so if we were to set up a new office, somewhere in Europe, with where would that have to be based on the talent pools?
Cool.
And which companies are there, and how does the remuneration package look there? And so where does talent flow? I mean, another question is, for instance, so how much people, let's say, come into the company with what kind of talents and what kind of backgrounds and experiences, and how many people leave, and if they leave, where do they leave? So what is our competition? So there's like thousands of questions you can ask to the dashboard, and to get a full understanding actually of what I think is the number one priority of any company, because it's a sustainable competitive advantage, which is your talent. I mean, talent cannot be copied. Right? I mean, a lot of things can be built. You can, business models can be copied, products, services, etc. But talent is unique. And so, I think with LTI, we're on the forefront of that, because we put, let's say, that kind of insights at the fingertips of HR departments.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you don't even think about those kind of kind of options when you're thinking about LinkedIn, because you're LinkedIn. Yeah. I mean, of course, it's a huge database, all kinds of profiles and stuff like that. But it's interesting for, I think, a lot of companies, especially when you're a bigger company, you want to expand, right? Where you're like, okay, where am I going to expand to? What is the kind of demographic, in the sense where I look at, okay, for example, I need developers or something like that. And I need to know if that language that we're using on our platform, is that even big in that country, right? Because, for example, in the Netherlands, PHP is a big one, right? Maybe for a company, it would be very interesting if they are using PHP to come here, because there is a large talent pool.
Well, and for instance, turning our data, our collective data of all of those billions of points into insights, let's say, is actually a big part of what is LinkedIn about, like actionable insights. Some of those insights we provide to the market in our reports. So, for instance, just the other day, we launched the Dutch 2020 talent report, which basically gives you a rundown of, let's say, the most in-demand jobs, the most 15 in-demand jobs in the Netherlands. Basically also a little bit as a bit of the zeitgeist of, what people look for on our platform, what recruiters look for, and basically also to help, education institutions to shape their curriculums for students. So they say, watch out. I mean, let's say, for instance, privacy officers or customer success representatives are going to be a big part of the new talent. Let's say in certain pockets of our network and around the globe. So all of that data into insights where you can actually work with is a big part of what we're about.
Yeah, and I mean, you see all these kind of new jobs popping up all around us, and that's also one of the things that I think it could help with as well, where you can see like, oh, there's kind of a lot of demand for people with machine learning experience, for example, or something like that. Right?
Exactly. So and we also see, so there's a current demand, but actually what's most interesting is what is the future demand.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so where do I play? From any perspective. And so this is a big part.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, what I notice a lot around me is a lot of people kind of underestimate the kind of power of a great network, right? Where they're like, okay, why would I need a network at all? They're like, I know the people around me, and that's fine, right? But how do you feel LinkedIn can amplify that and help kind of these people to build their network? Because that's I think a big part of being successful is having a great network. But how do you feel LinkedIn helps with that?
So here's the premise, and this is what Alan Blue, one of our co-founders, once said. He said, professionals that give or ask for help can achieve anything. So this is the premise. So basically, as much as we're a talent company and where people find their next job or can build their career, etc., it's really about success. And so much to what we just spoke about, building your network is actually also closely tied to building, let's say, your reputation. And so when an opportunity arises, and this may not be an immediate opportunity, it may be an opportunity that's a few months down the line, a few years down the line. I mean, and we've all had that in let's say in other places too. Because, for instance, there may be an old colleague, right, that a few years down the line, they end up working somewhere else. You work somewhere else. You maybe haven't even spoken for 2 years, 3 years, right?
Yeah.
But if you're connected and you follow each other on an occasion in the feed, and if an opportunity arises in your company or in their company, I mean, it's so easy, right? If you maintain that connection, just to reach out. And I've had that where people that I haven't spoken to for maybe two years, they reach out and immediately it's fine because I know they're in my network. They're a trusted person, right?
You know who it is.
I've seen them post interesting content or they stayed connected in some way. We may not have spoken personally. So I think it's a lot about that. And when you talk about let's say the underestimating, let's say, the power. I really feel that LinkedIn is a great platform to build your professional brand.
Yeah.
So, it's of course, we have a complete rundown on your profile of your achievements and where you work and what you do and etc. And a lot of people can still improve on that. But I think predominantly it's really about, if you're passionate about your field of work, your expertise, and let's say intrinsically you want to share that. So you want to help others, let's say, with the knowledge you've gained or the experience you have. I think this is also a two-way street. So for you, it's giving back to the network, and you never know how you may be able to help people with that insight, exactly, with that particular piece of knowledge, etc., which ultimately builds your reputation, builds your professional brand. And so, if you keep at that, the value, let's say, from that may come very unexpected.
Yeah, it's a great tip for building a network to at least give that value back, right? Where
yes.
What are some of the other? You get this question a lot, I think. But what are some of the other tips that you would give someone that's maybe starting out? Because I can imagine when you're just starting out as a professional, it's kind of daunting to create that professional network, right?
Yes.
What are some of the tips you would give that person, for example?
So take, for instance, students, right? So in the Netherlands, we got a high student population on LinkedIn, both from college and university degrees, and at some point they realize, right, my personal social media is not going to cut it, in the professional world, right? I mean, it's a bit hard, with your Snapchat profile to apply for a job or to provide any professional relevant context, right? And so usually there's a couple of things here. So first, never underestimate actually what parts of your resume, even though it's thin because you haven't had a real job yet, but what parts of that resume may tell future employees or recruiters. So I give you a few examples. If part-time you were a referee in soccer or in field hockey, right? That actually put that down because it speaks to your leadership capabilities.
Yeah.
You have to take split decisions. You have to stand by your decision and you lead a match or a game, right? So that's one. If you've had a summer job, either it's in a restaurant or in a bar or whatever, it speaks to how you can relate to guests. Like there's millions of situations that arise. How do you deal with it? You can. There's learnings in that, right? It speaks to you about a person as a person you're relating to other people, for instance, and it goes on and on. So that's the first tip on building. Let's say start building your resume.
Yeah.
Then the other, even on another front, there's people that have been employed by the same employer for quite some time. So we see people that have been employed by a company maybe for 20 years, 10, 20, 50, 25 years. Yeah. You see less, but there's still a large group.
Still,
I would say, instead of just listing that you've been in that function for a certain amount of years, and it doesn't have to be bragging, but just talk about, let's say, what are the changes? What are the projects you work on? What are the achievements of the company? How do you relate to the achievements of those companies? What have you done at that company? All of those things, right? So this is how you actually build, and you tell a little bit more about who you are as a professional. Now, in building your network, and coming back to the students, actually, it's actually easier maybe than you think, because where you start off with is, so let's first start with your family. Like, where does the family work?
Yeah.
Where does your mother work? Where does your father work? Maybe sisters, nephews, etc. Like, go down the list of the family, look them up once you've created a profile, and connect them, right? Because they're all in companies. Right, so this is the first part. But another part is like, there's people in the faculty, your professor, teachers, whatever, but also a lot of your peers, your friends. I mean, are they doing internships? Do they already work at companies, et cetera, through all sorts of student bodies? You connect them. And then, also very interesting, maybe make a list of, let's say, 10, 20 companies where you ultimately aspire to work. You're going to like, what if I could be a marketeer at company X, Y, or Z? Look up those companies, start following those companies, and maybe even find out who those current people are, right? Go to your university page. Look at the suggestions we give you for people that have also studied at your university or college and the current roles they're at. 9 times out of 10, if you would, follow them or even ask them for a connection request and say, hey, I'm starting out. I see you also studied at. I would really like to maybe get to know you to find out how you got there, etc. 9 out of 10 times, if it's genuine, people will connect and they will help you. So there's all sorts of ways in which you can, build your profile and then build a network. The number one tip is just do it. I guess that's another company, right? But I mean, just do it. You have to just do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think a lot of people forget the kind of power of just asking, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I've had it. I'm a mentor in a foundation for students in Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. So what was interesting, I was at a conference not too long ago, and I was talking to one of the mentees that I had.
Yeah.
And he was like, I want to do more in Internet of Things, and I want to get to know more. And I was like, I have some people in my network that do that, right? That have a company in that space or whatever. And I'm like, why don't you just go to their profile, send a connection request, say, I'm this and this person, I'm really interested in IoT and blah, blah, blah. Could you maybe help me out? Or I just want to follow you and just see what you're posting about, just so I can get a sense of what that kind of industry is like.
And for following, you don't even have to ask permission. You just follow them.
Yeah.
But, if you really have a question, right? If you're, say you're writing a thesis or you're thinking of, that line of business and you're wondering, okay, so what kind of extra education could I use to get into that field?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if you reach out to people and you ask them the genuine question, 9 out of 10 times you will get an answer.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate. A lot of people really want to give back.
Absolutely. I'm one of those people as well. Yeah.
Certainly, if they have achieved already, let's say, something in life or in their professional career, at some point, everyone's going to think like, how can I help others?
Exactly.
Right? It's a very natural human thing.
Yeah.
And so, this is the tip.
Yeah, and a lot of people like to talk about what they've done and what their experiences were like. And I see that all around me. And I genuinely think that if I had that as well when I was like, okay, I want to get further in my career. I was like, I need to talk to people that already did this, right? Where they're
you don't have to invent the wheel yourself, right?
Yeah, it's just more like, okay, for example, if you want to be a CTO, say for instance, there's not a real school for that, right? It's just, you need to learn from experience, but also need to just ask the people that already are a CTO, like, what's kind of the things that you really do on a daily basis that make you a CTO, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of
definitely.
It's just asking. It's just asking all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to get Great tips, by the way, because
okay, cool.
Those are the things that I think that a lot of people don't fully use the power of LinkedIn in that sense, where you could definitely get even better than this.
Yeah.
When you look at like the challenges that you face as a company as well, what are some of the challenges you feel that LinkedIn is facing right now, or actually will face in the future? What are some of the things that you think you will focus on more down the line?
So, in my opinion, what we're trying to do, as I said, from a vision perspective, is to create economic opportunity for the global workforce.
Yeah.
Technology plays a big part in that. And I think one of the biggest challenges we face is, let's say, every movement that basically makes the world more closed than instead of a more open place, right? I think this is in general the biggest challenge we face. And so this could be, anything from trade barriers, trade tariffs, to, governments, shutting down networks, closing off, not only having physical borders, but actually digital borders. So in all sorts of ways, everything that makes that world less connected and much more internally focused than externally focused. I think this is the biggest challenge for a network.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, what we see still today is that, the disbalance between the available opportunity. We truly believe that there's talent, let's say, in each and every one of us, in the global population, and in the over 3 billion people in the workforce. They all have a unique talent. But the opportunity to fully develop that talent, is only in certain pockets of the world, right? And so this disbalance, this friction, is what we're trying to make much more even through our network.
Yeah.
But then we need to make sure, that the people with that talent actually have access to that opportunity at scale, which is usually now through, the power of your cell phone. And so you need to have access. So I think this is by far the biggest challenge we have.
Yeah. And when you look at that, for example, when you're talking about the opportunities, I mean, that's why LinkedIn Learning is a good platform as well, where you can just go on. Of course, you need to have the premium account, but you can go on, you can watch videos about all kinds of stuff that you may be interested in and get to learn that way instead of just in a classroom or wherever you are.
Yeah, so we feel that, let's say, if you talk about unemployment, actually it's not because of the lack of talent. It's much more, let's say, what we call skill gap.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talent. So take, for instance, the automotive industry, right? A big part still today of the automotive industry, let's say in everything that has to do with manufacturing is let's say, taken over by robots, right? But still, it's traditional engines, etc., etc. So this displaces actually a lot of people that used to work in that industry, as you can imagine. Right. Yeah. On the other hand, right, if you talk about the servicing of those vehicles, and then even the second wave, everything that has to do with electric vehicles, there's a huge demand for, let's say, more engineering talent. So let's say, basically, very practically, the people that normally work in a garage and maybe do the service checks on your car, or when something needs to be repaired, right? Those people have a unique talent. The only thing is, now that world moves so fast, the talent needs to be upscaled to a new type of talent where they still can be employed, but just in a different manner. Right? And I think this is just one example. Another example is everything that has to do with frontline work, right? I mean, you even see it here in the Netherlands where supermarket, first they went cashless and now, they went to self-checkout.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
There's a huge amount of people that still work as a frontline employee in supermarkets.
What are they going to do? Right?
Exactly. Yeah. But by the same token, you see that there's another type of job, let's say, in this supermarket, because it's all about convenience. It's all about service, right? And so much more people may be needed on that front, but you need a different type of skill set.
Exactly.
Right? And then just check out the groceries. And I think at scale, a learning platform can help with that, because everything let's say if you want to transform your workforce, let's say, and you want to change your frontline workers, for instance, from, people that check you in a hotel or check you out or check out your groceries, but you want to transform that workforce into people, let's say, much more from a hospitality point of view.
Exactly.
Right? How can you at scale basically train them and upskill them? Well, I think, everyone that has a mobile phone, everyone that has access to some form of a learning platform, if you can create a learning path for them and you assign them, let's say, with this learning path, and you take them through these courses on which they score points at the end of the line, and so they're certified, right?
Exactly.
This is actually what can tell you at scale, these employees can now be put to work in this new job. And so, it's definitely part of a solution. It's not the solution, but it's part of a solution for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like that's totally right. A lot of people are like afraid of kind of the technological advancements, and they're like, okay, what's it going to do with my job? Do I have a job still later on?
Yes.
But it's not, do I have a job? It's like, can you adapt to the new situation, right?
Yes.
That's basically it.
Yes.
Are you going to adapt and maybe see other opportunities by having this technological advancement, right?
Take the marketing field, for instance. Like if you look at all marketing has become digital. All marketing basically has really, really become about ROI, and it's basically almost like a sales job, right?
Exactly.
So how many dollars do you put in? And how many dollars do you get out after you run a certain campaign? It's all become digital, and it's all become about data turning into insights. And eventually, based on those insights, let's say, make decisions.
Yeah.
Now, what we've seen over the years, right, and is that the machine, basically through the algorithm, right, can make a lot of decisions for you. Right, but still, let's say, so it's not that the marketeer is not needed, right? Because ultimately, if you talk about creativity and if you talk about everything, let's say taking all of those various data and insight components and creating them into an insights that build, let's say, the marketing plan, that's still what humans, what people are great at, and what can never be done by the machine.
Yeah.
But as a marketeer, let's say, if you see this coming, if you have seen this coming, and you see what's coming 5 years down the line, you have to make sure you stay up to date with everything that has to do with the modern marketer's marketing stack.
Exactly.
Which is a lot about tooling, which is a lot about certifications, right? And so, if you look at jobs on LinkedIn openings for that, we're even able to tell you, your matching rate with the skills actually that are required, the skills that you may lack, and then you need to invest in that. And so I think in today's world, like say, even coming from university, or if you're in a professional role such as you and I, let's say on average, your skill gaps grows, let's say, every year. If you don't do anything, if you don't apply, let's say, continuous learning mindset. Because the world is changing too fast. You can't sit still, and it touches every industry.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes total sense. There's a few questions before we wrap up. There's one thing that I was really wondering about. So I see a lot of people that have like maybe 10,000 connections or 10,000 plus connections on LinkedIn. And most you probably don't know everyone. I mean, let's be honest. But what do you feel like do you feel like that's an issue or something that should change, or do you feel like that's actually a good power to have, these enormous kind of networks? Yeah.
So again, what you have to understand is this stems basically from way before we had this following option.
Yeah.
Right, where it became quite normal to follow people. So that's one.
Yeah.
I think on every network, you will see that people will just go for the vanity metric.
Yeah.
Which basically because they feel like one, it gives them a certain status, or basically they feel they can monetize that. So I mean, it's really on a case by case situation. What we have done, by the way, is when we introduced the following option, the max capacity of your professional network in terms of connection can be 30,000. It can be no more. Right. We've also, and you may notice this, let's say everyone that has over 500 connections, we've put on their profile 500 plus.
Yeah.
So we never show, let's say, the actual number, because we don't want building your network to be about the number.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so, but still, I mean, there's an option. Some people put it to great use because, for instance, they share a lot of tips about using LinkedIn, about helping others with their network, in their feed, all of those things. So some people put it to great use. And other people are just about the vanity metrics, and so it really depends. I mean, but we've given the options now to people to also just build their following base.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was always wondering why it was 500 plus and not more than that.
Yeah, because we actually, it's really true. We don't want it to be about the number.
Yeah.
We want it to be about quality and not the quantity.
Yeah.
Right.
You could still see the amount of followers, but that's not the thing, right?
No, I mean, you can look it up.
Yeah.
Definitely, you can look it up. I mean, but as Simon Sinek, a famous quote of Simon Sinek said, don't count the impressions, count the impressed.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is actually what we as LinkedIn are also about. If you share something in the feed, and I don't know, I don't actually think there's a difference if, whether 20 people like it or 200 or 2,000 people like it. It's about, what do they like? How did they become engaged? And maybe there's just, even if it's just one or two people getting so inspired that they take the next step. I mean, if this was the goal, if this was right, goal. And so that's much more important than the number.
Yeah, that's the thing with the podcast as well. What I'm doing is like if someone can get like one or two ideas from this podcast, it's already a done deal, right?
Exactly. And it's I think only when monetization comes into play, right? When monetization comes into play, you get into this number area where there's still, let's say, various currencies going around about how do you monetize, let's say, a certain audience, and what's the value of that audience for people on the other end. Right?
Exactly.
And this is so. But we've seen many discussions on that, on people that have huge amount of followers, millions, right? But as it turns out, maybe half of those were, I don't know how they were acquired. They were bought. They were, whatever happens on networks, right? And so ultimately, back to everything that has to do with your reputation and the authenticity, right? I think in the long run, what really plays out is the quality, right, and not the quantity. And so I think this is what it's all about.
For sure, you see a lot of people with insane amounts of followers, and then you're like, you're just getting like 20 likes or something on your post, and there was a famous, I don't know, Instagram model or something like that, and she was like, buy my merchandise, and she had like millions of followers, and like 30 people bought the merchandise, right? And that's kind of
the interesting thing is, what you sometimes see is that people have a huge amount of followers or connections. They post something and they feel, let's say that, so it didn't work, it wasn't engaging, and they feel it's the algorithm, it's something in the machine that actually put them
put the post lower
in the feed, etc. But in fact, it's not true. It's all about, does your content, does what you share, does it truly resonate with your audience? And I strongly believe that in that sense, good quality content, achieve its goals, right? And that's really what's important.
Very cool. On that note, I have two more questions.
Yeah.
One of the questions is actually more related to posting, because I sometimes also struggle to find out, like, okay, what's kind of the content that I need to create to make it more engaging, right? Where people are like, okay, I really like this content, or I want to engage with it through comments or whatever. Are there some kind of tips or tricks or small little things that you could do to kind of improve that quality?
Yeah, so I would say, so again, it's also a little bit different from company's perspective or members' perspective. But let's start with the member, because most of the listeners are just LinkedIn members, right? And they post content. So I would say, and maybe it's an open door, but it needs to be very authentic. So if you create your own content, so because you can create or you can curate, right? Yeah. There's a difference. If you create your own content, make it authentic, which means that, see yourself as a professional with a certain expertise in your field, because that's your role, that's your professional, whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee in a certain function at a company, right? And so take your personal perspective. So that's one. So this is an important one. Secondly, people resonate with that because people ultimately, let's say, feel a connection most with other people. Yeah. So if you create a video, right? If you create a vlog or something like that, like maybe a 1-minute vlog, and you have an opinion about something, or you want to show people something, this usually really resonates. Right, so that
you could see the person as well.
You could see the person, so that's one. Secondly, very important, you may get likes on your on that video. We've got a whole bunch of different types of engagements, below your post. I mean, people can applaud it. They can exactly. Share that they are inspired, etc. But some people just react to that, so they ask a follow-up question, or they provide a comment. So my biggest tip is also to acknowledge those comments.
Always,
and see the platform also as a way where, you may do that in the feed, or send them a personal note and say, hey, that actually, I saw a great question. If you want to follow up on that, maybe we should connect, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So I think the engagement is also a big part of it when you post something. Yeah. I think from a company perspective, I feel this comes basically from, usually companies, when they post content in the feed, in general, because they want to achieve certain goals. And if it's too much about sales, like a one-way street, like where you want to sell something and not so much care about helping others, let's say, then usually this is where it's less optimal. Yeah. So my biggest tip there is, coming back to, let's say, the mission we have to connect professionals to make them more productive and successful. So as a company, I would say, if you build a content calendar, if you build, let's say, a framework for that, truly think about, the other end of the screen and say, how can I actually help this audience become more productive and successful with something that I share from my area of expertise as a company? Yeah. So let's say, if you're selling a CRM system and you want people to buy your CRM system, ultimately, yes, that may be the goal. But it may be very inspiring for people to say, hey, listen, if you're looking for a new CRM, these are the 5 things that we that we see people look for. Yeah. Right? So the 5 tips in assessing if your CRM is up to date. For instance, this may help people. I mean, and there's hundreds of examples of topics around, let's say, selling a CRM system that you can actually inspire your audience with. Now, I can guarantee you that over time, if you keep at this, right, and you build a reputation as a company at this, sure, I mean, you will be legitimized enough by the network to also provide an offer. And say, at a certain point, like, we've got this offer, et cetera, so click here, maybe sign up, et cetera. So I guess that's
after the value proposition.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, let's say in the old times, you tried as quick as you could to sell something, and if as a customer you're lucky, this company also would want to build a relationship. Yeah. Right? Now it's flipped. The other way around. Yeah. You first really have to build a relationship, build on the reputation, build on the trust, consistency over time. And then, when you're lucky as a company, people also buy from you. And if they bought from you, they both have the relationship and the product or the service. This goes hand in hand, but it's a different way of investing. So that's my tip on posting content in the feed.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's totally correct. I mean, that's why cold calling doesn't work with me as well, right? If someone calls me out of the blue, like, okay, do you want this? I'm like, did I even ask for this?
No, and and it's. I mean, I don't think it's effective at all because out of the blue. Right? People get so much signals on a daily basis. I mean, and to be really honest, I've done it, at the beginning of my career, before we had all this.
Makes sense.
Right? This is how you reached out to people. But in these modern days, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that anymore.
Cool. I have one more question. Last question. A lot of people say the toughest one. But what are you kind of most proud of since you started this whole journey with LinkedIn?
Yeah. So as shared before, so we're a talent company, and so what I am most proud of actually is how through LinkedIn I've been able to build the talent within the company. So which basically means hiring people with a certain skill set. They're great at what they do, and actually helping them, coaching them, and see them evolve as a professional in our team. And so that's what I'm most proud of. And I have many examples of people that I've seen come in and that have totally changed the tables and changed the stakes and actually achieved goals that they may not have seen let's say when they came in. So that's actually in the end of the day what I'm most proud of is just, building the talent within the company.
Very cool. Very cool. How can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's very easy, right? So you just go to my profile. So
on LinkedIn.
on LinkedIn, right? So
I will link to it.
Yeah, follow me. I guess typing my name in the search engine will come up with some links.
Yeah,
I guess left and right on all sides. And actually, so my biggest tip about if you want to follow developments on LinkedIn, I have 2 tips. So one is we have an official company blog.
Okay.
So any search engine you will type in, official blog LinkedIn, you'll find the link. You can subscribe to that, so you'll stay informed of anything that's happening on our network and on innovations, etc.
Cool.
And the second part about how we're trying to build, let's say, and create economic opportunity is we have a page called the Economic Graph, the LinkedIn Economic Graph. And so if you search for that, also in any search engine, or you can type it in the search bar on LinkedIn, you can subscribe to that page and you'll stay up to date of everything that we do, let's say turning our data into insights and how that's actually helping, let's say, shape the world's economy. So that's quite interesting page to follow also.
I'm going to do that. I'm really going to do that.
Yeah, welcome to.
Thanks, Marcel, a lot for doing this podcast. It was very inspirational.
Thank you very much. I'm very welcome.
No problem. And for the listeners, you can find the Bits vs. Bytes podcast on bitsvsbytes.com. Of course, on Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn. Of course. It's all Bits vs. Bytes, and you can subscribe to the newsletter. There's a newsletter every 2 weeks about 5 things about the business, technology, and leadership. You can find that on bitsvsbytes.com/newsletter. And I'd like to thank you for listening. Until next.